Hello, and welcome back to Indie Book Talk. Today, we have Marie Vibbert, the author of The Gods Awoke, and a frequent teacher through Literary Cleveland. She's done a few different topics there. Also, has published many short stories in magazines, so we're going to ask her about that. Marie, welcome to the show.
Hi, it's great to
Welcome.
be here.
So Emma says many. I believe the number was 80 short stories that you've had published.
Yeah, if I check the submission grinder here, I've had 88 acceptances since I started
Wow.
using the
Okay.
submission grinder, which is pretty cool.
Okay.
Um,
So can
I
you
think
tell the audience a little bit about what Submission Grinder is? It's a website, I believe, that
yeah, the submission grinder is a free crowdsourced database of submission statistics. So um, they maintain a list of magazines that are open to submissions and anthologies, and people update with how long they've been waiting and when they get a response. And so you get statistics on how quickly places respond, which helps me because
Mhm.
I when I was struggling as a writer, when I hadn't really sold anything, my sister challenged me. She said she would buy me a present for every 100 rejections I got. And the submission grinder was really handy because I could submit to places like Clarkesworld that rejects really fast and get my numbers up. I'm not joking.
This is an amazing no, guys, we have to pause here because this is an amazing strategy. Rewarding rejection in this context is so cool because rejection sucks.
It
Mhm.
It's
does.
painful. It, especially if you've poured your heart into a short story or a book as we all have. Rewarding that is amazing, and I bet you submitted to magazines you never would have touched before or felt like you could reach because hey,
Mhm.
you got rewarded for being rejected.
Right. She challenged me to this in like 2011, and by 2013 I'd sold my first professional rate story.
That's awesome.
And I really have to hand it to my twin sister Gracie because she gave me a polka dot bathing suit for my first reward, and it was awesome, and she really got me going. Um,
That's
and
great. So what are you publishing? Is it all across the board? Do you have a particular niche that you publish in?
I'm mostly science fiction, a little bit of urban fantasy. I've sold like one secondary world fantasy story, um, one story that's kind of horror, but yeah, mostly science fiction. Um, Particularly, I like to write about working class science fiction, robots with jobs and
Robots and
robots with jobs. That's my thing.
So I'm picturing Joe the robot like going off to the factory like what is robots with jobs? Is this a recognized term that I just don't know?
No, I just made that up right
I
now as
love it.
I'm talking to you. I've done, let me see, I had a robot bartender in one story, and I had a robot dock worker. The the story that everyone told me I needed to change the title of, which was called On the Changing Roles of Dock Workers, which I sold to Analog, and I never changed the title, so ha. Um, I have a story about a space trucker using time dilation to sell single malt scotch called single malt spacecraft. That's what it's called. Yes.
10 out of 10 would read.
Yes.
Yeah, because it takes like it takes about 20 years to get to Betelgeuse and back, and so just she puts the whiskey in storage, and when she comes back, she has 20-year-old single malt scotch. Win.
That's amazing. Okay.
That's a
So
unique concept there.
your stories sound amazing. I now want to go hunt down all the publications that you've published in. But my question is, do you have a strategy? Did you develop a strategy for who you were applying to or how you were deciding who to apply to? Or has it purely been a volume approach?
There's some of it is volume because I think the more you write, the less precious any given story you write is. And I truly believe that I became a better writer by writing more stories and looking at story as a unit instead of, say, challenging myself to write 1,000 words a day.
Mm.
Um, but I started right off from the bat only submitting to SIFLA recognized markets. That's markets that pay the professional rate of, well, right now it's 8 cents a word. It was like 6 cents a word when I started. And I went to markets that respond quickly first. So I sent everything to Clarkesworld first. And I had 69 rejections from Clarkesworld before I sold my first story to Clarkesworld just last year. Um,
Were you like, ah, you rejected me so many times, and now look, now it's here. I would like want to frame that. Like that's so exciting.
69 made me very happy, I'm not gonna lie, just as a number.
It's a good number.
It's a great number. The 69, dude. What? But the most I've gotten rejections on a single story was 50. It's an even
Wow.
50. And
And that
that
was
was
published?
that has been accepted. It's not published yet. It's going to be in Zombies Need Brains online. Um, Zombies Needs Brains presents their new online imprint. So that is The Silver Dame and the Box of Mystery. It's about sibling rivalry among killer robots with time travel in 1940s St. Louis.
That's a lot.
See, because again, I just keep coming up with ideas and churning them out, and they're all different, and it makes for a very diverse life.
So, is your book, because we introduced you as author of The Gods Awoke, is this a short story collection or is this a full length novel?
This is a full-length novel,
When
and
did you find time to do that?
I I s- I always saw myself as a novelist first,
Mhm.
and I only started trying to sell short stories because a friend told me, "Well, if you sell a couple short stories, that'll make you more appealing to agents." I still don't have an agent, but I've
You're
sold
like, "I
over
got this. I can do it myself."
80 short stories. I don't believe agents exist. I think they're like unicorns. Other people are lying to me.
It's a
They,
conspiracy that the entire author community is perpetrating on you, Marie.
yes, there is no such thing. They are a mythical being. Don't believe the lies.
Don't
I've
believe the
They're
lie.
never
robots.
actually seen an agent in the flesh. I have I have a friend who thinks I shouldn't say that, but she represents nonfiction, so shame on
Well,
her.
that's not helpful.
Not helpful to me in the slightest. Some kind
No.
of friend.
She should change her specialty so that she can. No. Okay. So
Have
the Gods Awoke full length novel. Um, is it about robots or gods or both or something else?
it's about gods, and I started writing it in like 2001 when I was working as a network technician. So I was working the midnight to 8 a.m. shift, which had a surprising amount of downtime. I don't need to tell you that I did a lot of writing at work because the main thrust of my employment was that I was on campus should something break.
Mm.
And um, I wanted to write something about gods. I was from an atheist perspective, which sounds really
Okay.
stupid, right? But I was really into a lot of things like American Gods and Neil Gaiman and Q on Star Trek. And why, like, if you had a creature that was this powerful, would they necessarily have to be a god? Um, and even if gods did exist, would you necessarily have to worship them, or would it be better not to? So that was my premise, and I had fun writing it. at the time I thought science fiction would be too hard because I wasn't smart enough, and so fantasy was better. But I have to admit that I am mostly a science fiction reader, and the book does have sort of a it's like fantasy as science fiction people like it, which I think is a separate genre. Its own little niche in fantasy is fantasy by science fiction people. Because I had a friend of mine read my draft and she was like, Marie, this is a terrible novel. This isn't fantasy. Um, because I like to have everything have a reason. You know, I'm not into the ineffable. I'm into the effable. So the
So
story,
the gods that you're writing about, are they like gods you've made up for the book? Are they Roman, Greek? Are they, I
they're
mean,
made
are they
up for the
known
book.
gods?
I
Okay.
didn't want to touch any real religion with like a 20-foot miter, you know. So it's a made up polytheistic polytheistic religion, which seems slightly Romanesque, and it's a matriarchy because fuck patriarchy, and because I'm writing it, okay?
Yeah.
And so there's this matriarchal pantheon. They have, 15 major goddesses plus a major god. He's the god of
Yeah,
being attractive. And
your
oh, and
token god.
The token god. I love it.
he started life as a mortal, but he was raised to godhood because the goddess fell in love with him. True story. Um, not true,
True
but
story.
Hashtag true story.
I no, I had fun being a female chauvinist pig in this, and
I
among
have
the
a
main
very
among
important question for you
yes,
as a writer of the novel that you were describing. Have you read Small Gods by Terry Pratchett?
I have not. I probably ought to.
I
I'm like this is another reason why I'm a bad fantasy writer. I've never read Terry Pratchett.
Okay, so first of all, he writes about gods from a at least agnostic, but most of his life definitely atheistic perspective. He does not take the gods very seriously, but they do like impact the world. But in Small Gods specifically, it is an exploration of this a similar question to the one you're asking of like, if gods exist, do we necessarily need to worship them, or would we be better off not? So I'm saying this partially because I think you should read it, but also because listeners, if you've read Small Gods, it sounds like, and you liked it, which I can't imagine there's a world where there are people who read that book and didn't like it, then you probably may like The Gods Awoke. It's a similar exploration. So,
I'll have to
but
definitely see. Nobody who has pitched Pratchett to me has done it as well as you. So
I
I
am
am on
a
board.
mildly obsessive fan.
I'm gonna
Not all
check
of his
that out.
stuff is he goes through a continuum, right? Like his very early work um is not my favorite, and the further into his timeline you get, the better I like his stuff, so I really see him evolving over time. So I think a lot of people get turned off to Pratchett because they start at the beginning.
Mm.
And you don't have to read most of his books, you don't have to read in order, so there's no real reason to start with those earliest books. um so if I were going to give you a starting point, I'd say start there, and then there's other books. If you like that one, I'll give you more recommendations. But
But now on your marketing, you'd be like, "Did you like Terry Pratchett's Small Gods? You'll love this one."
Yeah.
which brings
Yeah.
us very tenuously to a question that I want to ask because I know the answer, which is uh, The Gods Awoke is not published directly by you, right? You have a publisher that you're working with?
Yes.
Yes.
Journey Press.
Okay.
So
And
yeah.
that may be familiar because we spoke to Gideon a few weeks ago.
So you
So
know Journey Press. Yeah,
so we
that's
know Journey
brilliant.
Press. So that's how all this connects, guys. It's all connecting.
And I have to say, again, dealing with my inability to find an agent, I think I'm really terrible at querying. And I have to give Gideon props because he basically just contacted me. He's like, Marie, I love your short stories. I'd love to publish a novel by you. Send me one.
Aw,
That's
nice.
amazing.
Yes.
Yeah,
You're like, "Okay."
I I
Did you have it
appreciated
written at that
Gideon's.
point?
I'm sorry,
Oh, go
what?
ahead.
Did you have that written when he asked for a book,
Oh yeah,
or
I
did
had
you
it
get
written. Yeah, I've got like 5 or 6 novels on my hard drive right now. Tell your friends.
If any of your friends happen to be these mythical agents,
Yeah, that I still don't believe exist. Prove me wrong. Call me.
there's some real confrontational conversations here. Okay.
Don't exist. You're a myth. A myth, I tell you.
Okay. So, Shelly, I've completely lost the plot. What are we talking about?
We're talking about Journey
I
Press.
think we're yeah. We haven't talked about world building, if you wanna touch on that a little bit. How
Yes,
much world
world
building you
building.
felt you had to do to get your book created?
So, right, I wanted to talk about these difficult religious topics, and I wanted to do it without pissing anyone off, which is why I needed a secondary world. And I started with just like, okay, I'm going to make a fake religion. I'll make it polytheistic because those are funner, and I'll make it matriarchal because fuck patriarchy. And then it became a question of, is this different enough from any modern or any real world polytheism? I had to make sure that it was removed from Greek and Roman and Norse mythologies that would be familiar to our audience. And I realized that part of what makes a good religion is making fun of it. So I had to make sure that there was a culture of irreverence and humor. You don't have Christianity without Life of Brian, and you don't have Judaism without Jews in space. So I included, you have to have Mel Brooks to have Jews. You just do. So
Balance.
it's about balance. It's about how, like, not just that we have an artificial world with an artificial religion, but the people in this artificial world are going to react to their religion in a continuum the same as we do in ours, right? There's going to be believers and non-believers and cheesters, who just believe on the holidays. So I included a references to a comedy about the mythical made up god of filth, Skroktar, um, which was based on an inside joke that some of my friends and I had where we were somewhere and we saw somebody go by and my friend was like, "Wow, who's that? The high priest of Skroktar?" And from that point on, people who dressed in a particularly flamboyant way were, Skroks and, worshippers of Skroktar. So I threw that in the book, why not? Um, I think a mistake a lot of world builders make is to be too consistent
Mhm. I was
because
just thinking that. Yeah. When you look at a lot of, I think it happens a lot in sci-fi, but it's also in fantasy where they take like a whole planet and somehow the whole planet all has everyone has the same views or the same cultural background or
right,
they all share the same religion or the same government. And it's like, really? I
right.
think we've expressed pretty clearly that that's not really a functional way to live.
Yeah, people are always going to be contrary. We like it. And I think one of the things that makes languages feel real is having um brains, what's the word? Exceptions. Like irregular verbs. Like English is nothing but irregular verbs. Uh so again, when I came up with the way that the names worked and I came up with like rules or whatever, and then I was like, okay, now I've made 3 characters that follow this rule. The next character has to break the rule. Just to break it because it'll feel more real
Hmm.
if there's exceptions to the rules. Like
That's
every man has
great.
a three-letter
Yeah.
name, except for this guy who has a four-letter name. Why? Because.
Yeah, no, that's good. You gotta make sure you have the differences put in there.
Yeah.
I think that's really brave though. Like I think that a lot of authors in their fear that their story won't feel authentic or their fear that the reader won't get the patterns that they're showing or whatever that they like double down too hard on one pattern, one way of doing things, and I think that's a really important point that sometimes, it's the irreverence that shows you what reverence is. It's the exception that shows you what the rule looks like and gives it
Right.
context. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a
There's no
really
reverence without irreverence, and it makes the reverence better, I think,
absolutely.
to show that there was an option all along.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Okay, now that we've gone like way deep into philosophy all of a sudden, sorry. No, I'm not sorry. This is what
Quick,
we
show
do.
the dog.
Show the dog. Show us your dog.
No, Koala just ran away.
Oh
I
my
don't know
gosh.
why. She just ran away.
Her dog is like the agents. She also doesn't exist.
She's a beautiful blue pit bull, and she was right next to me, bothering me this whole time. But then my brother-in-law went into the kitchen, so Koala was
Oh,
like, "Ooh, that's the
Oh,
room with
kitchen.
treats."
That's
snacks.
important.
Yes.
Okay. Well, perhaps when you send us your headshot for our promotional purposes, perhaps you would maybe send us a picture of Koala to share with the listeners because they love to see the puppies.
She's beautiful. I will definitely send you a picture. My kid
Fabulous.
complains that I have more pictures of the dog than her on my phone.
Well, uh, if people want to follow you, not like in a creepy way, but in a like, follow you online and see what's going on. I realize like without context, that was very crazy jump. Don't just follow people. It's creepy. Um, if
I
they want to
run really
know
slow.
if they want to know what you're up to, and maybe hear about your next short story, because I'm sure 89 is right around the corner. Where can they find you on the internet?
I have a website. It's marievibbert.com, MarieVibbert.com. And I always link everything that I have that's free online there. So there's a variety of things. I'm on Twitter at Mareese, Marease, because Reese was taken. Reese was my childhood nickname. And I'm also on Mastodon. I'm on wandering.shop as Reesie, Reasie. I chose the spelling when I was 8. That's why it makes no sense. I'm on TikTok as also at Mareese or Marie Vibbert. And I'm on Instagram and Facebook too, if you're old. And
Hey,
I
hey,
know
hey!
Facebook is for
Whoa,
the old
whoa!
now. I just released my first book, Galactic Hellcats, as an audiobook. It's available at Audible and iTunes. It's about an all-female biker gang in outer space rescuing a gay prince.
Yes.
Publishers Weekly called it a rip-roaring space heist. I am really proud of that. I was
I
like,
like the way you delivered that line.
like I am being a shill, and I will shill for you. I am not too proud. There she is. Hello, baby. You didn't get a treat, did you? And you came right back to me.
We
The dog
were
is
we were really just stalling to see the dog. Can you show us the dog?
back. Okay, Koala. Look at the camera. Koala, baby.
Oh,
Koala.
Sugar.
I
Oh,
know
hi
I'm
puppy.
shy. Can't
If you're
wait.
watching on the YouTubes, you can see the puppy. If you're not watching on the YouTubes, go watch on the YouTubes and see the
So
puppy.
cute.
Hi, Puss.
Oh,
Oh
Yes,
my
baby.
goodness.
Yes, baby. Yes. Okay.
Yeah,
There,
we're
she
professional.
finally faced the camera a little bit.
thank you.
Well,
Thank you
thank you
so
for
much for
coming
being on the
on.
show.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.